we love to see in the community, working together, supporting one another, and also doing a good job when we get the support of others. So we're going to get into all of that in just a moment on the other side of this. So Sister Omilade, please bring us home.
Please check out ANU-bookstore.com for book releases from ANU Publishing, such as Grasping the Root of Divine Power, Solutions for Dysfunctional Family Relationships, and Natural Hair for Young Women. At ANU-bookstore.com, you'll find books on the Orisha tradition, African religion, divination, cross-cultural relationships, and many more forthcoming titles. At ANU-bookstore.com, you'll find works that serve your journey to evolution and high vibratory sustainment. The website is ANU-bookstore.com. And now back to our segment.
It's 16 minutes after the hour, and you're listening to the ANU Asafo show, where Pan-Africanism meets African traditional spirituality, with your host, brothers Ifawunmi Oshundeli and me, Brother Wole Mango Ifa. And sitting in the ANU Asafo studios this week is our special guest, Brother James Weeks, producer of Across the King's River. Brother James Weeks, welcome to ANU Asafo. Brother James, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome to the ANU Asafo show, brother.
Well, thank you so much for having me as a guest. It's an honor to be on your show.
It is a great gift to have you here. And speaking of gifts, this project that you're working on is inspiring a lot of people. You know that. You've been working on it for a while. And you have been getting some support from the community as well. Before we get into that, I want you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you've come to your current spiritual walk, brother.
Well, I am originally from the Caribbean. I was the glory boy for my board. And then the other thing too is sometimes when some artists who want to do certain projects, they don't always get the full support of the community to bring their ideas to fruition. And the whole business of the big screen, whether it's a big screen or a small screen, it's also still a business, and they have to survive, you know. And the case in point is this: at the moment, two friends of mine, with colleagues, two filmmakers that I know, you may have heard of them, Kingdom, Daly, and Adafo. They do the documentary project, Ancestral Voices. Are you familiar with that project?
Yes, I am.
Okay, well, right now they have a funding drive on Indiegogo to raise funds for a sequel to that film. They hope to raise $60,000. You know, that's their goal. But the last time I checked, it was maybe they raised so far, well, 1,600, around that. But they have a fan base of over 30,000 people on Facebook. And, you know, if everyone on their page donated $1 or more, well, they could get a lot closer to the funding goal. So my point in just mentioning this is, well, here's two other filmmakers out of the United Kingdom in this case. They're trying to do a project, but they're having difficulty even raising money from their own fan base, you know, which is their own support group. And so, it goes back to your question about the big screen. To get to, like, the big screen, more people would have to support these types of films. And it's not always easy to get people to do. By, you know, flashy speakers or whatever. They'll do whatever it is that they feel they have to do, but it's not always easy to get the support, so it's easier said than done many times.
Shay. And Brother Weeks, well, have you and other independent African film producers, have you have you ever considered attending the annual Cannes Film Festival to promote projects? As I understand, that's like the first step when you're trying to get a audience or investors for some of these projects.
No, it's not the first step, actually. But no, we there was just there have been some delays. I do have some investors who are interested in the project. There have been some delays over the years, which is not unusual in this field. It's not unusual for there to be delays for one reason or another. It's quite usual, even for very, very established filmmakers. I remember reading some time ago that I think it's George Lucas, who did big film, Star Wars. He was trying to do a film about Red Tails, about the Tuskegee Airmen. Well, even for him, it seemed like
your documentary, when, as you say in the clip, so many people from Brazil and Europe and the Americas, they all come to see him. That was a great coup. How did that come about? I know you're saving some for the film, but
well, first I want to say, I had no idea that you actually met him, and so he was one of my mentors. I had many mentors, so he was one of them, and he was the person that initiated me into IFA. So, but he's the other elders that we speak to in the film, so I wouldn't say it revolves only around him. He's one of several people that influenced the project and whose spirit still guides the project in many ways. The last time I saw him was in 2008, and what was it like? Well, like you said, you made a reference of the reading he did for you. I will never forget the first reading he did for me. When you come to a reading with someone like him, you have to be prepared to face, difficult truth, or you have to be prepared to change in some ways, or you have to be prepared for the reality of what's coming down in the future. And sometimes people say they're interested in going spiritually, but they don't want to. They're not really prepared. They're not really prepared to hear the truth. So I really relate to what you said about you being stirred in some ways by the first reading that he did for you, because in many ways I am still stirred by the first reading he did for me as well.
Oh, Shay. Now, Brother Weeks, in my honest opinion, the Oprah Winfreys, the Tyler Perrys, the Will Smiths, Bill Cosby, Spike Lees, and yes, the James Weeks should be able to collaborate economically to get funding with projects, especially if there's an audience for the material. There should be unity on the projects which uplifts the black family, tell our stories politically and spiritually. How can we in the diaspora, throughout the diaspora, expect unity of like minds when those of us who possess the economic power to complete films and other projects for our own education and entertainment, when we cannot work together?
Well, I would say, and again, I can't speak for the work of the people one time. I know the ancestors have the last word, and so that's what I would say. The ancestors have the last word, and what I would say is we know that funding will come, and that it's on the way. We know that, and so we just have to wait until our time is right. Not just for this project, but for all of the projects, like the novel that you say you're working on, for everything that we wish to do in our life, for all of the change that we would like to see, for the prayers that we have out there. We just have to just be diligent and allow for the divine to work through us and with us.
Sounds good. Baba, I should call you Baba instead of brother because I wasn't aware of your level of initiation.
Either way, I find that too. I am a brother to many people, so you're still on track.
Ashe. Let's talk about the incredible potential of this project. I'm one who I spent a lot of time just searching around the internet, and especially on YouTube, and you see a lot of videos on Ifa in particular, but most of them are in the Yoruba language. But other than the UN's clip, this one clip by, I should know his name, I knew I was going to bring that up, but thought is refreshingly new and different about your project from the clip I saw was first the excellent quality of the soundtrack, of the visual images, and the narration. You know, everything is, the production is excellent, production quality, but the potential of the impact of it, because there's very little information on Ifa in English. And we're in the second decade of the 21st century, and we kind of would imagine that there would be more, because there's so many people running around, around the country, proclaiming Ifa and proclaiming being initiated and calling themselves Babalawos and all this, and we need more. So I think that the potential of your project, once it hits, is incredible. I'm sure you know this already, but I'm not sure how to put this into a question. But how does that knowledge inspire you, or there must be a little frustration, because as Ifawunmi was talking to you about getting economic funding, you know, it's a process.
Just because we're not sick doesn't mean that we don't need to be healed, you know? Just because we may not feel in physical pain, it doesn't mean we're not in need of healing. And so I would say every one of us in some way is in need of healing, deep healing. Why? Because all of us in some way have been hurt, you know, in some way. Some have been hurt in a very, very, you know, harsh, ugly, nasty way. Some are hurt, I'll put it this way, some are hurting more than other people, you know. And some people are not even aware that they've been hurt. So all of us who walk this earth in some way is in need of healing, because in some way all of us have been hurt. In some way all of us, we need to find our way back home spiritually.
Ashe, and it's 16 minutes before the hour, and you're sitting with the ANU Asafo show, where Pan-Africanism meets African traditional spirituality, with your host, Brothers Ifawunmi Oshundeli, and me, Brother Wole Mango Ifa. And our special guest right now in the ANU Asafo studios is Baba James Weeks, the producer of the film Across the King's River. And Baba Weeks, would you give the audience your contact information at this point?
Oh, definitely. You can reach me at www.acrossthekingsriver.com, or you can, my phone number, for any reason you need to reach out to me, is 510-388-5500. Again, that's acrossthekingsriver.com. 510-388-5500.
Ashe, that's fantastic. Speaking on what Ifawunmi just asked you about, and your answer to it about the possibility of a series, might somewhere down the line, and how far do you think we are away from a documentary on Ifa in the United States?
I think that will come. You know, I think that will come. I think, I know, earlier this year, I know NPR just did a radio program on a small radio segment. I don't know if you heard it, on Ifa in the United States, in the African American community. But Ifa, as I'm sure you know, is one of the fastest growing indigenous spiritual systems in the world. You know, I remember a couple of years ago when I had a chance to talk to Professor Wole. He told me that it's literally spreading like wildfire. And when you think about, for me anyway, when you think about how Israel has been repressed for centuries, when I essentially moved to Japan recently, for example. So this rapid growth, I know it's also going to inspire people back home in Africa, in Nigeria, wherever these traditions are, to hold on to their traditions, because even back in Africa, in Nigeria, for example, I think it's 40% Christian among the Yoruba people, maybe 40% Muslim, and then the rest are hold on to indigenous Ifa tradition. It's going to inspire other generations of young Africans to look to their own traditions and to see value in them. Why? Partly because they see the explosion of the outside of Africa, and then they realize that there must be some value in this. I remember once when I had a conversation with Omar Sosa, who again will be the composer for Across the Kings River, and he told me something to the effect that when he came to the United States from Cuba, and in a sense that's when he started to realize more the beauty of his own people and his own spiritual tradition, and he went back to move closer to it, but that was because he saw how it was growing here. And so, yes, the growth of these traditions here in the West and in other parts of the world, I know will inspire other generations back home in Africa. So there is some truth in that statement. I need to understand what you mean by that.
Ashe. And from the listening audience, we have a question about that. The question asks, do you believe that the producing of the documentary itself will have a particular ritualistic impact on our collective community, even on those who don't necessarily see the film from a spiritual perspective?
Yes, and the answer to that is yes. And the reason why I say that is because people write me all the time, and they tell me that this project is having an impact in their lives. It's in some way changing their lives. And that humbles me because I think, well, the film isn't done yet, and people are telling me that it's having such an impact on them. And to that, I would say, all praise to the ancestors. And to that, I would also say that in what each and every one of us, in what we're called to do, sometimes we become so goal-oriented. We think that we're at point A, and our goal, of course, is to get to point B and to accomplish whatever goal we set out. But sometimes what can happen along the way is you can have a tremendous impact long before you get to point B. So it's something to keep in mind, for example, as you work on your novel and try to meet my godfather, Dawo Ashada, and some of the other elders there. So that inspired me to do that. As to how I got into the tradition on this level, it's the will of the ancestors. At one point, although I knew about Ifa and I knew about these traditions, at one point long ago I felt, I know about this and it's interesting, but it doesn't really have anything to do with me. It's not really my tradition. It's not really for me to walk this path. And what happened at one point was my eldest son, started getting into trouble with the law, getting arrested, things like that. And when I say getting into trouble, I mean serious trouble. So much so that there was no peace in the house for a long time. And so during one night when he was giving us hell, I went to see a diviner, Ifa diviner who was in town. And I went there because I wanted some insight into my son. But when I got there, the diviner gave me insight into myself. Also he told me, hey, you're supposed to be on this path. This is your spiritual name. And he told me some things about my future. And that's when it all clicked. That's when it all resonated. And that's when I became serious about walking my path and going down this road. And having said that, I would say that unless we as human people, human spirits, unless we tap into our own spirituality or our own spirits or the spirits of the higher forces, we won't be all that we could become in life. We won't be able to empower ourselves, and we won't be able to empower others. I believe the spiritual world is where all of our best ideas come from, whether it's in arts, whether it's in science, whether it's in healing. This is where it comes from. It has spiritual origins. And so to unlock our full potential, we have to become more spiritual.
Ashe. But we know that your time is really limited, and we really want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us. We really appreciate it. Would you once again give us the contact information, because we have some questions that we frankly don't have time to ask you, and so people know how to get to you?
Sure, okay. You can reach me at, again, acrossthekingsriver.com, www.acrossthekingsriver.com, or you can call me at 510-388-500, and feel welcome to send me an email. I always write people back. It doesn't matter who writes me. Whenever someone writes me, I always send them a personal response right back, because it's important to me to do that. So just always feel welcome to reach out, and then you'll always hear from me.
Great. And can we have your phone number one more time? A little slower.
Sure. It's 510-388-5500.
5500. Yes, that's area code 510-388-5500, 5500. And this has been great. This has been most enlightening.
Chauvinistic attitude toward New York Panther women, that they had to be ended off at gunpoint. Some party leaders thought the fight for gender equality was a threat to men and a distraction from the struggle for racial equality. In response, the Chicago and New York chapters, among others, established equal gender rights as a priority and tried to eradicate sexist attitudes. By the time the Black Panther Party disbanded, official policy was to reprimand men who violated the rules of gender equality. The murder of Betty Van Patter. Black Panther bookkeeper Betty Van Patter was murdered in 1974. Although this crime was never solved, the Panthers, according to the magazine Mother Jones, were almost universally believed to be responsible. David Horowitz became certain that Black Panther members were responsible and denounced the Panthers. When Huey Newton was shot dead 15 years later, Horowitz characterized Newton as the killer of Betty Van Patter. When Art Goldberg, a former colleague at Rampers, alleged that Horowitz himself was responsible for the death of Van Patter by recommending her for the position of Black Panther accountant. Horowitz counter-alleged that the Panthers had killed more than a dozen people in the course of conducting extortion, prostitution, and drug rackets in the Oakland ghetto. He said further that the organization was committed to doctrines that are false and to causes that are demonstrably wrong-headed and even evil. Former chairperson Elaine Brown also questioned Horowitz's motives and recommended Van Patter to the Panthers. She suspected espionage. Horowitz later became known for his conservative viewpoints and opposition to leftist thought. Let us further explore key female players in the Black Panther Party. Writer, activist, and educator Angela Davis, who hailed from Birmingham, Alabama, is best known as a radical African-American educator and activist for civil rights and other social issues. She knew about racial prejudice from her experiences with discrimination growing up in Alabama. As a teenager, Davis organized interracial study groups, which were broken up by the police. She also knew several of the young African-American girls killed in the Birmingham church bombing of 1963. Davis later moved north and went to Rocco Laurie University on January 28, 1972. Shakira was alleged to have been directly involved with the Foster and Laurie murders and involved with the Piagentini and Jones murders. Some sources go further, identify Shakira as a de facto leader and the soul of the Black Liberation Army after the arrest of co-founder Doroba Moore. Robert Daley, Deputy Commissioner of the New York City Police Department, for example, described Shakur as the final wanted fugitive, the soul of the gang, the mother hen who kept them together, kept them moving, kept them shooting. Asafo Shakur was involved in several shootouts with law enforcement. Most notable shootout occurred on the New Jersey Turnpike in East Brunswick, where Ashata was wounded, and her husband was killed, and a state trooper was shot twice in the head with his own gun. At the time of the shootout, Asafo Shakur was a member of the Black Liberation Army and no longer a member of the Black Panther Party. Between 1973 and 1977, in New York and New Jersey, Shakur was indicted 10 times, resulting in 7 different criminal trials. Shakira was charged with 2 bank robberies, the kidnapping of a Brooklyn heroin dealer, attempted murder of 2 Queens police officers stemming from a January 23, 1973 failed ambush, and 8 other felonies related to the Turnpike shootout. Of these trials, 3 resulted in acquittals, 1 in a hung jury, 1 in a change of venue, 1 in mistrial due to pregnancy, and 1 in conviction. 3 indictments were dismissed without trials. In the history of New Jersey, no woman pretrial detainee or prisoner has ever been treated as Asafo was, continuously confined in a men's prison under 24-hour surveillance of her most intimate functions, without intellectual sustenance, adequate medical attention, exercise, and without the company of other women for all the years she was in custody. Shakira was identified as a political prisoner as early as October 8, 1973 by Angela Davis. The United Nations Commission on Human Rights concluded in 1979 that her treatment was totally unbefitting of any prisoner. Their investigation, which focused on alleged human rights abuses of political prisoners, cited Shakira as one of the worst cases of such abuses, and including her in a class of victims of FBI misconduct through the COINTELPRO strategy and other forms of illegal government conduct, who as political actors have been selectively targeted for provocation, false arrest, entrapment, fabrication of evidence, and spurious criminal persecutions. On November 7, 1979, she escaped the Clinton Correctional Facility for Women in New Jersey, when 3 members of the Black Liberation Army visited her, drew concealed .45 caliber pistols, seized 2 guards as hostages, and commandeered a prison van. The van escaped through an unfenced section of the prison into the parking lot of a state school for the handicapped, 1.5 miles away. Blue and white Lincoln and a blue Mercury Comet were waiting. No one was injured during the prison break, including the guards turned hostages who were left in the parking lot. After her escape, Shakira lived as a fugitive for several years. The FBI circulated wanted posters throughout New York, New Jersey area. Her supporters hung Asafo Shakira is welcome here posters in response. For years after Shakira's escape, the movement, activity, and phone calls with her friends and relatives included Ifawunmi walking to school in April 1960. After the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., she attended her first meeting of the Los Angeles chapter of the Black Panther Party. She joined as a rank-and-file member, studying revolutionary literature, selling Black Panther Party newspapers, and cleaning guns, among other tasks. She soon helped the party set up its first free breakfast for children program in Los Angeles, as well as the party's initial free busing to prison program and free legal aid program. As part of a directive by Black Panther Party leader Huey Newton, Brown unsuccessfully ran for the Oakland City Council in 1973, getting 30% of the vote. She ran again in 1975, losing again with 44% of the vote. When Newton fled to Cuba in 1974 in the face of murder charges, he appointed Elaine Brown to lead the party. The first woman to do so, Elaine Brown chaired the Black Panther Party from 1974 until 1977. In her 1992 memoir, A Taste of Power, she wrote about the experience. Quote, a woman in the Black Power movement was considered at best irrelevant. A woman asserting herself was a pariah. If a woman assumed the role of leadership, she was said to be broken black manhood, to be hindering the progress of the black race. She was an enemy of the black people. I knew I had to muster something mighty to manage the Black Panther Party, end quote. During Brown's leadership of the Black Panther Party, she focused on electoral politics and community service. In 1977, she managed Lionel Wilson's victorious campaign to become Oakland's first black mayor. Also, Brown developed the Panthers Liberation School, which was recognized by the state of California as a model school. Elaine's enemies had to latch onto the belief that Elaine was a man-hating feminist. Very soon after